Hey everybody, today I got a question from Peter Tailor in the comments, and he's saying, so he finally installed Ubuntu 22.04 on an Asus Z790. Could be an MSI, whichever, but it's a Z790 motherboard. He wants to use the newer kernels, but he doesn't understand, the how the relationship between an Ubuntu version and the kernel works. So 22.04 comes with a 5.15, which is the one that he has by default right now. 22.10 comes with 519 and so on and so forth. His question is in regards to hardware compatibility and if it's worth upgrading to a non-LTS release like the one that I'm using right now. So before I start answering this to everybody, the ones that don't know me, I've been an Ubuntu user and advocate for the past 15 years, something like that, 19 years, well, something like that. Like I started on Linux in 2001. Caldera Linux, Novell, Gentoo, Linux from scratch, just learning why the hell, at that moment, why the hell was there an alternative to Windows if Windows was the best thing ever? And why was it free? And why the hell did I have access to the code? What's happening? So in 2001, that was my head there, thinking, why is there? I did get an impact, like a slap in the face, the moment that I saw things like I think we can go to 2006, 2007, something like that, when the performance of World of Warcraft through Wine was much better. The FPS was much better than on Windows at that time, and that got me thinking, what what is happening here? This is as far as my understanding that year, this is a small group of coders, developers, software developers, versus a huge company. I wasn't a friend of Microsoft at that moment when the World of Warcraft thing happened, but because they did a lot of FUD, and there's also a lot of FUD inside the Linux ecosystem. FUD, by the way, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That they use it as a marketing tactic, an evil marketing tactic. But anyway, point being, this operating system was making a game that was built for Windows run better than the version for it on Windows. And I was actually a World of Warcraft gamer, so I had my Druid and everything there. So that actually had an impact on me. So what I did was start testing other distributions. I set a Gen 2, Slackware, OpenSUSE, Red Hat. I had the opportunity to work in a huge company. It's an oil company. They were using Red Hat at that moment. I started playing with Linux from scratch, so to know more about kernel optimizations. Jesus, that's like another level. Gen 2, with the stage 3 kind of optimizations too. A lot of testing went there. Puppy Linux, and then distributions that specialize in hacking or white hacking, just to be on the safe side. Um, and all of these other things. If you're in old school, you know about AFA Messenger, AMSN, and you know the things that you were able to do when somebody was in incognito and they put like they're offline, but they're not really offline. And all the cool things that you were able to do with, back on those days. And you're still able to do some of those things. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is I've had since 2001 up to now a couple of years, okay, of Linux experience in a lot of areas, okay, not just desktop. I left most of those areas with the exception of system administration, cloud infrastructures, and cloud engineering, security, um, and just I minimize the amount of areas that I want to actually target and focus on. And yeah, currently I'm a desktop user, but I still manage a lot of the tools here. And The reason why I picked Ubuntu was mainly because the one that was promoting more Linux as an alternative at that moment. So we'll need to go back to 2004 as an alternative to Windows. It was the first one that did a big impact, especially with that free CDs everywhere. That had a big impact on people thinking twice about, do I really need to install Windows? Can I actually make my computer work on Linux? And I was able to actually even help people, that were 70 years old, 75 years old, be able to use Ubuntu on their computer. And even then, for example, I had cases where for the first time after several years, they were able to use their printer because that specific printer did not have the drivers that were required on Windows, and Windows did not create the drivers for that. There was incompatibility, but the moment they actually install Ubuntu with Samba, it actually worked, and they were super happy. So it was a very cool moment. Okay, now coming back to all my blah blah to these actual questions, based on a lot of years or experience on Linux. I was also the moderator in Ask Ubuntu for 9 years, something like that. If you've ever used Ubuntu, then you know who I am. Um, I'm going to answer this in different ways. Okay. Why? Because one of the ways is going to go against the way that Ubuntu um, releases a version. Okay. And basically, I'm going to end up promoting Arch and other stuff. So for a newer kernel that has better support for newer, everything in the hardware, is it worth upgrading to a non-LTS release? Yes, mainly because of that, of what you're asking. You need support or you need stability for the hardware that you just bought, and you literally bought one of the newest motherboards. Okay, so you need support for that, and you're not gonna wait 6 months. I mean, who's gonna wait 6 months for that? Why am I saying that? Because there are also other distributions that are not Ubuntu that do something called rolling release, or RR for short. So rolling release is basically they keep updating, some daily, which is crazy, some weekly, some monthly, so some bi-weekly. They keep launching or releasing updates to the version, so it's not like Ubuntu 2204. It would be just like Ubuntu. That's it, and you start getting all the updates for that release up to a certain point. Then there's a new one that comes with everything updated up to that date. So Arch is one of those. They keep updating a lot of the drivers. If you're an AMD user, especially with the video part, obviously you'll enjoy more Arch because it's more up to date. If Ubuntu 2304 comes out, then it's going to have the latest of everything for the latest graphic cards that AMD launched. Um, so that's good. But for now, you either need to install what's called a PPA, okay, which is a package manager that basically extends the package management system of the distribution at that moment, in this case Ubuntu, so that you can install specific or more up-to-date specific things to your distribution. In this case, when you're an Nvidia user, normally I tell people, okay, search for the Nvidia PPA, which is this one here, and you just install that one. And you're like, how do you install it? Well, they'll always have a summary on how to do several things, especially feedback, and they have this little thing here. You don't need to do this. Since a couple of versions ago on Ubuntu, you just run this one, and that's all. And with that, then you decide which package, and let's just put the one that I'm using, Kinetic, which package you want to use. So if you want the latest NVIDIA drivers, you get that one, or basically you install this package, NVIDIA Graphics Driver 525, which is the same thing as me doing this. Okay, NVIDIA Graphics driver to 525. I run that. It's gonna say, well, it's there, blah blah blah. I'm not running it here. Let me do a driver 525. 525. Yeah, there we go. So instead of running this one for the NVIDIA users, you run this one. If you're an AMD user, your video card, I mean, um, this you don't need to do anything. If you're in Arch, you don't need to do anything. You just gets updated. I do know the AMD has, because the Mesa 23 has not been released, then obviously you're gonna get some issues there. But it's soon. It's very soon. It's like I was, like I said last week, I was gonna assume that it was this week or next week. The Mesa 23 will come out for the people that have the latest AMD video cards. Everybody else is just we're all fine. So to answer that question, yes, it would be best if you update it to the latest release, independently if it's an LTS or not, because you have hardware that came out after that release. So this Z790 came out after April 22, 2022. So that's why you need to update over here. Now, in regards to stability, that's why you would get an LTS. You get a lot of stability on normal versions. Before, and we're talking probably 6, 8 versions ago, maybe you could have had an issue. Okay, and now the probabilities of having that issue is super low, super low. Okay, so you can see me that I'm in the 2210, and I actually use a lot of the tools that I use for work, and then I also I render and code, like here's even Handbrake, and I do a bunch of things, and I don't get crashes or weird things happening to me. Now, I don't get them because I actually updated to the latest kernel. But if I were to stay on the 519, I was actually having issues. Why? Same thing. This type of hardware came out or was launched basically either at the same time or after the 519 was released. So I had to update to the newest one. That's why I'm showing you all this here. So there's a specific page that it's called kernelnewbies.org. This page actually lags a lot. Like if you visit kernelnewbies.org, which I'm going to leave in the description, and it loads super fast for you, you're lucky. Great for you. For me, it takes a really long time. I'm not closing any of these tabs because I'm afraid. And if you go here, you can see a summary, a beautiful summary of the different kernel versions. So they have a page called kernelnews.org/Linux versions. You can see all the versions. If you're in 2204, you're basically somewhere in here, 5.15, and you're missing 16, 17, 18, 19, and this too. So let me show you what you're missing for your motherboard and CPU. Okay, if you're in Intel, if you're in AMD, you're still missing a lot of things. But if you're like me, and you have a 13900 or something like that, you can see that the support for this CPU, or at least good support, or the beginning of the support, started on the 5.16. And then on the 17, let's type Raptor here, we had some additional support there. Something here with the power management for the CPU, something with the PCI of it. And then on 18, we had, for example, we had something there. I don't know what the hell that is, but we had something. Here, more ACPI stuff. Here, more stuff. More. Okay. Let's do a Raptor here on the 19, which is 2210. Split lock was added for the Raptor leg, which is suck. I actually disabled this. And just in case, if you saw my previous videos, you can see how you can disable that in the kernel. Basically, you come here, okay? And I'm on my previous videos actually mentioning all this, the impact of kernel parameters. And I put a rule. These are my notes. This is just for me. This is not default there. These are just notes for me investigating for the past 3 months the impact of all this. That there was a lot of rebooting. Let's put it like that. And there's some options here that I need to remove once we get to 6.2 or 6.3 of the kernel. But in the meantime, I need to leave them there because the way that my CPU works and the way that this little baby here creates issues with games on Steam. It basically, every time the split lock kicks in with Steam, your game crashes. So if you don't have this here and you see that your games crash like 5-10 times a day, add this option on your kernel. Again, let me go here, and we're talking about, I put this too, So split lock detect off and split lock mitigate 0. And those would take care of, actually I mentioned that here somewhere. Avoid warnings on the image along with crashes on Steam for multiple games. I need to wait for the 6.3 before disabling this so I can test it again. And this split lock detect off and the split lock mitigate, they work together. Okay. So do you need to update to a newer kernel? Yes, you do. There's too many updates every time a new kernel appears. Okay. Rolling release distributions benefit from this a lot, like Arch. Okay. But you need to know a little bit more about Linux. Let's put it like that. So for me, it's weird when somebody in Arch has issues and they can't solve them, and the issues are very simple or something like that. That means that somebody recommended Arch to them, and they were studying on Linux. That's like I don't know. You're gonna learn how to drive a car, and I take you to NASCAR immediately. Okay, that's not fair. You gotta stay with distributions that are more friendly. Linux Mint, Debian, OpenSUSE. Let me see. Oh, there's a bunch. Ubuntu. But Arch is more of it's more for professionals or advanced Linux users as a whole, especially for the installation process because it uses an old one. Gen 2 is also a more Gen 2 is not a gentle distribution for beginners. Let's put it like that. There are other variants of those, like for Arch, there's variants, distributions that are based on it that make it easier for you to use Arch. The same way that Ubuntu has an easier version called Linux Mint, and there's others, of course, but um, um, you need to do that beginning research there. Again, to answer your question about all these jumps, even on the 6.1, there's still, this is what I want to show, there's still updates coming in. Look, the power management for the Intel. So there's still updates coming in for the latest CPUs. And for AMD too. It's not just Intel. Like you can see a lot of things are happening on AMD, on the AMD side. Okay? So that's for something to take into consideration. So to answer your question, I think you already know the answer. Yes, update to this. You're not gonna be waiting 6 months. It's better to not wait those 6 months and actually enjoy your computer the way that you're meant to be. Would 2204 work well with newer kernels? Okay, let's say that you want to stay with the 2204. The answer is yes. The other computer that I have here actually uses 2204, and I updated the kernel to 6.1 point something. I forgot which version. It's working perfectly. Nothing happened. Nothing bad. Performance is the same. Actually, it might be better. But yeah, you can. If you don't want to update from the 2204 to the 2210, go ahead and just update the kernel. How do you update the kernel? Okay, I'm gonna leave this link in the comments below. You just, what you do is you go to here, you select the kernel that you want to apply to. So for example, I did the 6.1.9. So what you do is, you don't need to select, by the way, you don't need to select these ones because these are just maintenance. So Ubuntu does maintenance for a lot of kernels. You can see really old ones here, really old ones. But in your particular case, you either go with a stable one like 6.1, or you go with a newer bleeding edge one like 6.2. But because it's in RC release candidate, you have a huge chance of the thing just crashing your system or something. I can tell you for a fact that, for example, when I tried RC3, because I'm a little bastard, it crashed the system. So I had to roll back to the 6. No, at that time it was 6.4. 614. And then I remove this one, that's it. But how do you do it? You click here, you download that, and let's go to folder here. So I did an example here. Once you have all them downloaded there, you put them in a folder, okay? Those 4 files that you're supposed to be downloading. By the way, the files are this one. AMD 64, all those 4. You go to that folder, and once you're there, you run sudo dpk G minus I. That's it. Or if you want to be more specific like this. Okay. Once you've done that, the whole process takes a couple of seconds. Let's just do it here. I already installed them, so that's why it's going to say this. But just for you to visually see what are you supposed to be seeing to update the kernel. If you don't see this, actually there's something missing here because it was the DKMS for the Nvidia and all those stuff. But it's longer. The process is longer. If it fails, it will crash immediately, and at the end it would tell you actually why it crashed, like cat died or something. If everything goes well, they can reboot. Sudo reboot. Voila, and you can test your kernel, the compatibility, etc., etc., etc. I do have. Let me show you so I can be open and fair here. These are all the only errors that I'm pending. This one is big. It's just me. It's something that I did and my fault. This is an actual error that it's pending. This one too. It's not an error. It's a warning. It's when the computer loaded. It just it let's put it like this. Maybe it loaded too fast or something like this. These are related to an issue with the ACPI of Nvidia. Okay, these are just warnings. And this one is something that I did on the BIOS that I don't know what I did. So in reality, there's only two issues here. The Bluetooth one that actually gets corrected once you load the environment. And this one, which is related to, I think it's a power play for the Logitech here. That I gotta connect in another USB connection or something like that. But other than that, I'm good. If I were to create this video on November of last year, you would have seen a much larger amount of errors. All of them got corrected either on the 6.0 or 6.1. Just wanted to be open there with that. Now, let's go to, let me see, new CPUs. Is that good enough? Pum, pum, pum. You don't need to wait that long for that. Do know that once you update from an LTS to a non-LTS, my recommendation is to update every time a new one comes out, or you can install it from scratch, like you do a backup or something like that, and you install it from scratch. Let me explain how I do it here. So what I do is don't mind the first, actually the last four. This is the structure that I'm using right now. Okay, and I have a partition for EFI. Okay, UEFI. I have a partition for sub that I actually don't need, but there's specific apps that are very annoying. And even though I have 128 gigabytes of RAM, they still want, obviously it's coded like that. They still want to use a swap for some reason. Instead of basically being optimized to read, oh, there's 128 gigabytes of RAM. Okay, we don't need the swap anymore. So I have this here just in case some app wants to, an app that's not properly coded still wants to use the swap. Okay, then this is basically the root, and because most of the things that I have are gonna be on home, then I didn't put a lot of space here. So you can see that there's a little bit space left, but I don't really care because we're not really gonna be using that much. And this is the actual home. You can actually see file system root. Here's a swap, the boot EFI, and here's everything on the home. Why did I do it like this? Because if I install a new version, all I gotta do is leave the home without formatting it. Leave home like this, just reuse this, format this one, and install the new Ubuntu on it, and just tell the new Ubuntu, hey, this is gonna be root, here's the swap, here's the EFI, and leave this one like that with the home. I'm done. Once it's finished, I'll have everything back to what I had before in terms of things that are installed and copy there. Now, obviously, if I want to use Steam, I gotta install Steam and Handbrake and whatever this is and everything there. Okay, but once they get installed, you don't need to copy or set up a lot of things because they're already here on the home. It's already done. You already did them on the past version of Ubuntu. That's why I do it like that, because it saves me time during the installation process. Okay. So again, I recommend, updating to the newest one. Now you know how to update your kernel. Sorry for the long video here. I just wanted to make sure that you don't have any doubts in regards to doing this update, and you're not afraid of doing it, and you know that you, at least I have your back. And if you have any issues, you can contact me there on my email. My email, just in case. Here you go. Okay, there you go. If you have any issues. By the way, me being from Ubuntu.com doesn't mean that it's the only one that I've. Again, like I mentioned, it's not the only one that I've used. Talking about that, for example, one critical thing that I would actually say bad about Ubuntu is the wiki for the public. If I gotta say something, that's why I got this baby here. Is the best, and I mean it, the best wiki that you can see for between all the distributions that I've used. The best wiki is the Arch Linux one. These people, this is a beautiful art of work. These people actually dedicated hours, days, weeks, months doing this whole thing. And they did it in a way that's very easy to understand, to repeat. For example, if I click here, NVIDIA tips and tricks, you know they did it so well when I actually come here for NVIDIA tips and tricks on my Ubuntu. Like I come here to look for advice and techniques and general guidance in solving some issues. And by the way, I was an Ubuntu moderator on Ask Ubuntu, okay, and I've been helping a lot of people, blah blah blah, and there's like 40 what, okay, but if I don't find the answer here, this is either the first or the second place that I go to solve. That's how good the wiki is here. And compared to the Ubuntu wiki, this is something like 100 times better. Not kidding. Not kidding. It's easy to digest. It actually shows you points that you actually wanted to search for or were searching for that you don't find anywhere else. I don't know if I've been pointing from Ask Ubuntu to the wiki of Arch Linux in some of my answers, but I should, because it is quality work. So this is an Ubuntu member saying Arch Linux rocks with this type of documentation, by the way. And if you're an Arch Linux user, I'm 200% sure that you spend your time here. I mean, look, kernel module parameters, something that I was really looking for. And here's what actually helped me with some of the questions that I had. And they actually work, by the way, on Ubuntu. So I just wanted to say that there. So to summarize the whole thing, thank you, Peter Tailor, for the questions. I hope this video helps anybody that has the similar questions. And now they know where to go, where to look, how to research, what to download, what to upgrade, okay? And without fear, you can leave a comment, okay? So if you need help with some of the things here, really don't care which distribution, but mainly I focus on Ubuntu. If you're coming from Arch Linux and you don't know how to install an NVIDIA driver, come here. But if you're a beginner, don't try to not use Arch Linux. If you're a beginner on the Linux environment, it's not an easy distribution. It's a very professional distribution that expects you to be at its level. Okay, everything here, it obviously comes from people that know how the whole thing works. This is quality work, so they're not going to be lowering it to a beginner's level. Let's put it like that. For me, I mean, a lot of the things here look like a beginner's level, but I've handled a lot of people from Arch and other distributions that basically get lost. So start with something easy, and then you can jump to something more optimized like this, which begs the question. I've not seen a lot of videos benchmarking with Mango HUD games. So that would be, if you know about a channel that I can compare my videos to, mainly because I want to know the performance impact of Ubuntu on gaming versus Arch Linux or other distributions. So the community has something to compare against in regards to optimizations, versioning, etc. All that. So thank you for the video. Peter, thank you for your question. Big hugs to everybody and think positive as always. Bye.